What about our food problem?
In the United States, we don't have one.
We don't.
No, we only...
Don't we have a problem with our topsoil where there's only like 60 seasons left of the topsoil?
Yeah, I've been hearing that for 40 years, and it hasn't happened yet. I don't mean to suggest that soil fertility isn't an issue, but when it comes to crop rotation and the fact that your fertilizer is made within North America, it's a manageable issue. I mean, we're not Brazil where there's zero soil fertility. And if something happens to one season of fertilizer supply, you just don't grow anything.
They have zero soil fertility?
Yeah, it's all reclaimed tropics. So they have to basically rip out the vegetation, poison the land with lime to get rid of the acid, and you get left with something like beach sand, and then you just throw fertilizer on it, and without the fertilizer, nothing grows. Now, with the fertilizer, you can get 2, maybe even 3 crops, so it's not a horrible business model, or at least it hasn't been to this point, but that was before the Ukraine war.
And Ukraine is where we get a lot of our fertilizer.
Russia specifically.
Russia. Yeah. So what would you advise us to do about that?
There's not a lot we can do about that. There are things that you can do with genomics and with precision agriculture to more target the inputs to each individual plant. That can work with corn and soy. It probably can't work with wheat because, if you see a corn stalk, you do a digital photo of it, the computer decides whether it's hungry or thirsty or has bugs, and it squirts it appropriately. Stalk. But wheat is just a maze of tiny, tiny little plants. There are too many of them for you to economically treat each individual one differently. And unfortunately, wheat is our number one crop in terms of calories. So it's genomics or nothing for wheat.
And we're better off than a lot of other countries.
We're the world's largest food producer and exporter. We are not going to starve. We might have some problems with out-of-season avocados, but I think we can live with that.
But the rest of the world, it seems like, according to your model, is in real dire straits.
Yeah. Over half of the world's population is food threatened now, and that's before we have fertilizer shortages.
And what was the cause of this? Like, why has there been so...
Runaway success. Since the Cold War ended, we've brought huge new swaths of humanity into the globalized system. And the integration of Russia and China and Brazil, that is the story of the post-Cold War era. But the reason that these parts of the world weren't in the first round wasn't just ideology. It was that their geography isn't as good. So Brazil's land sucks without fertilizer. The Russian territories has very low productivity, and China has some of the worst land in the world. It took globalization and the access to all of the resources of the globalized world in order to make these places do very well from an agricultural point of view. We're now seeing that unwind. We're only in the very early stages of this.
And as it unwinds, what can be done to mitigate this oncoming crisis that you're describing? Because it sounds quite terrifying.
We're going to have to pick winners and losers, unfortunately. There's just not enough. If we do start a significant build-out of the fertilizer system, it takes about 3 years to bring new nitrogen or phosphate systems online, but it takes like 10 years for potash. Now, the Canadians, after the Russians, are the world's leader, and they have started. They've seen the writing on the wall, and they're trying to speed it up however they can, but they still think they're going to need 7 years.
And what is potash?
Potash is a mineral that you mine, and I'm grossly oversimplifying here, but you basically crush it and dissolve a little bit of acid and turn it into a pellet form that you can distribute on a field. It's potassium fertilizer.
And this is just one...
It's one of the three. Potash is potassium, and then phosphate and nitrogen. Nitrogen, as a rule, is made out of natural gas, and the United States is the world's largest producer of natural gas, and we're in the process of building out our nitrogen capacity, in part because of this.
And when you say winners and losers, like what do you anticipate happens to the losers?
Well, I mean, if you only have enough fertilizer to support 500 million people, that means you get to choose who gets it. Do you let the market do it? Do you pick your friends? Do you pick yourselves? I mean, these are decisions we're going to have to make in the not too distant future.
And when you say we, you mean globally?
Well, it depends upon who has it in the first place. So the Canadians are the world's largest producers, single producers of potash. We are their number one customer. They also supply potash to Japan and Australia and New Zealand. After that, they have to make some really hard choices. Do we try to save just the Chinese or everyone else?
It's really that hard.
Yeah. We can't support our current population without industrialized inputs for agriculture. And without those inputs, on average, yields will drop by more than half.
And like, what kind of time frame are we talking about till this global collapse?
That, of course, is the billion-dollar question. Because of what's going on in China, we don't know, because the decision-making process has become so opaque. But the United States is pushing the trade dispute issue to the hilt, which is a really big problem if you're concerned about global stability. But if you think it was all going to break down anyway, there's something to be said for pulling the cord earlier. The Russian system could break tomorrow. We're at that point. And that is not just wheat, that is barley, that is potash, that is nitrogen, that is ammonia, that is lithium, that is nickel, that is copper. Pieces are falling out. And the risk here is that something will fall out that will then domino. And I think the issue to watch for that this coming year is the energy question. Because now that we have insurance companies saying just no, we're not going anywhere near the Russian space at all, it doesn't take much imagination for someone to think that something's going to go wrong in a war zone where energy has already been weaponized. And once Russian stuff goes offline for whatever reason, pressure builds up back into the pipe all the way to Siberia, and then the wells freeze shut, and you have to re-drill them. And the last time it took the Russians 30 years to re-drill everything. So when we lose Russian crude this time, it's gone for good.
Holy shit, dude. And so if you look ahead 25 years from now, how do you see the world?
25 years from now, we're going to be on the other side of this. So we're going to see a significant breakdown in a lot of systems over the course of this decade into next. But after that, my bet is we're going to see a number of technological advantages be developed in the United States and within its group that allow us to do more with less and which transform the economy into a more sustainable footing.